Hi everyone. So I'm going to be talking about the importance of childcare. Not so much the importance that childcare exists, but more how the quality of childcare that a child receives has a tremendous impact on the child. So that's why it's important. It's important that the people who are taking care of the children, that it's important who they are. It's important, well, when I say who they are, like all levels of who they are. Their emotional stability. Do they outburst? Do they have anger? Do they have any kind of these emotions? Do they exhibit good qualities like discipline, for example, or steadiness, or calm, or support, or let's say being positive, where you're focused on um, finding solutions to problems and presenting them, and also are they knowledgeable of the world, of how physical reality works? Are they able to express themselves as an individual? Um, and when I say that, I mean within knowing what they're expressing, and their expression is completely within their control and is part of their creative power. A reason why I say all these things are important is because that kind of person who is in childcare, whether that is a parent raising their own children or it's some other adult who's helping raise the children, if that person is, let's say, this kind of an individual, then that child will develop those similar qualities. They will equally also be practical, be positive, be stable emotionally, and all these different things, become knowledgeable of the world, how physicality works. Yeah. That is why, well, that's not why childcare is important. I haven't gotten to that yet. The why it's important is because once a child learns these things from the childcare individual, the child will have this as part of their life for the rest of their lives. It'll always be part of them. Even if they go through hard times and all these different things, they at least have that foundation. They have that experience. And that has a tremendous impact, and that's why it's important. Because the fact is that we are human beings, we have memories, our past helps build us who we are, and we receive our experiences through our environments as well as our own interaction with environments. Everything I'm saying is both common sense. I mean, you can see clearly how children become their parents. You can see how clearly children are affected by their environment. You can see, there's all sorts of little different details you can look at in terms of scientific studies where people do research on children and parents and how they grew up and in their environments, and there's lots of research involved in that, but in general you'll see that environments has a large impact on children, and it's common sense. Now, obviously, if you had a child and you had to go to work and you had to hire someone to take care of the children, whether it's at a daycare where someone takes care of multiple individuals or they come to your home as a nanny, you obviously want the individual to be the best possible. Now, these qualities I'm describing here, like in terms of who an individual ideally should be, that is something that may not actually be something that you have considered fully. For example, have you personally within your own life taken the steps to develop all these qualities for yourself, to be knowledgeable of how the world works, how physical reality works, things such as the food, your human body, how things in life work in terms of cooking or baking or things that are just part of life. Have you developed yourself so you don't emotionally become outbursting, or even keep it suppressed within your thoughts? Because eventually everything you suppress will become an outburst. And that's something that's also something you learn about how physical reality works and how the human body works and how people work. If you suppress something, if you suppress all your negative thoughts and what you're thinking, it's going to eventually turn into an outburst. Or it could affect your physical health. And that's also knowledge about how physical reality works. Have you looked at your ability to express yourself within stability, within clarity, within it being your own creative decision about who you are? And so on and so forth. I mean, if I were having a child, I would want to be an example for the child to be their best, because I know that I would be responsible for how the child would be, and I know it's not ideal to try to change oneself once you already have a child, because then you have to go through all that trouble of yourself, all your, let's say, inadequacies and things you haven't changed yet or dealt with are going to still come out, and the child is going to learn those things, and so you have to simultaneously work on yourself and support the child. So that would be very difficult, because then you are responsible for two individuals, both yourself and the child. So the best case scenario is you already worked on yourself, you're stable, you're clear, and then you could solely focus on the child in terms of what really needs correction, support, and understanding, because you already gave that to yourself. So then it's much easier, and you won't have to have the work of trying to, sort of like juggle all the different problems coming out within you, within them, and yeah, which is very common. Where imagine you have a certain problem with yourself, a certain defect, like you get angry very easily. When you become angry very easily, and let's say you have a child, the child will learn also to become angry very easily. And when you see the child get angry very easily, that reminds you of your own programming, and so your programming gets activated, and you also will react with an anger. And as you react with an anger towards their anger, they're going to react with an anger, and so on and so forth, until usually the parent wins out, because they end up using so much anger that it frightens the child, and so they suppress their anger and enter into a fear, and even in some cases it ends in within violence, where the parent hits the child, or the parent may say some threatening things to the child, threatening their well-being, threatening their physical safety. And then what happens is the child suppresses their anger, but then it will come out eventually, because that's how the programming works. And later on, they're going to become just like the parent, because at that young age, they already took on their parents' programming. So this is why childcare is important. Obviously, having childcare is important, but we're talking about the quality of childcare a child receives has a really tremendous impact on the child's life. If you were tasked with the task, with the goal, with the mission, if you were tasked with the mission to find at what stage of a human being's development, whether it's when they're young, when they're old, at what age, at what stage would you focus your resources on as a priority if you wanted to help all society to become better? So all of humanity to become better, all the generations, all the future generations, meaning, physical health, mental health, emotional health, just a general bettering of humanity. The stage that makes most sense based off of scientific research and based off common sense is the first 6-7 years of a child's life, of a human being's life. So if you were given certain resources and you put your resources in those 7 years, you would get the most out of what you put in. So if you want a society, if you want a country, if you want a humanity that is well developed in their mental capacities to use their mind, if you want a generation, a society, a humanity that is well developed in their physical health, that's well developed in their emotional stability, and their ability to express themselves creatively within their own power, within their own decision, the ability to be self-aware, taking self-responsibility, and being self-honest, and doing his best for everyone. You would focus on the first 7 years of everyone's life right now. So everyone who is 7 years younger, you'd focus all your resources on them. So you give as much as attention as you can. You make sure all the childcare professionals and all the daycares are highly trained, that they are paid well enough, that you have the highest standards. You make sure that all families with children of those ages receive free food, free healthcare, free everything that they need so that they're well developed and happy and well. And by putting all your resources in that, you would, within 7 years time, already have the first generation that had, the best possible care. Now obviously there are all sorts of opinions out there about what's right or what's wrong, but I work with science, I work with common sense, and so everything I'm talking about is not something contentious, not something that's problematic or even really questionable. If you look at all the evidence, all the information, all the studies, all the information available, both anecdotal evidence, both scientific evidence, all the studies, research done, is just there, information. I mean, how many human problems are there? From war to rape to murder to stealing, violence, being aggressive, being uncaring, being destructive, being egotistical, being very selfish and self-serving. How many human problems that humans have are there? How many problems are there? And how many problems of those would be prevented, or even, let's say, solved already, by focusing on the first 7 years of a child's life? On every child's life. And that's a question there, because I'm claiming that all the problems you see that humanity has, all the problems I listed, they're all connected to the first 7 years of life. It came from a moment of seeing an outburst of anger, an outburst of a judgment, an outburst of ego, of wanting something for just you, denying others. An outburst, an emotional outburst of taking something from someone else, of doing some sort of violence, some sort of aggression, of using very nice, pleasant words to actually trick someone to do something for you. How many things, problems within humanity, men, women, people, are really just passed on from our parents, from our caregivers? I'm suggesting that if we focus on this time period, if we put our focus on what is happening, if we put our attention to there, we can have a tremendous impact for the future and for everyone. Whatever you put your focus and attention to, that is where you have power. You can change what you're seeing, because once you see, you can go ahead and take the action to change. So we need to put focus and attention to this time period. We need to put awareness within ourselves as people and start working on ourselves as already not children, because none of us here are children watching this video, talking here. We already are at an older age where everything we've learned, it's already within us. So all the bad and the good, it's all there. So we have to take responsibility for that, because how else can we expect to prevent passing on, let's say, bad things, the problems of humanity, the sins of humanity, onto the next generation? If it's a part of who we are in our daily living, then it's going to be visible. So there's definitely a lot that we need to do. There's much work that needs to be done. But what I've outlined here gives a path, gives a solution that if enough people come together, we can start having an impact for all of humanity. But we need to work on ourselves, because we cannot expect to be able to successfully guide children if we ourselves have not guided ourselves to reach our utmost, this potential of what would be best for myself, for yourselves, and everyone else around us, which includes a point of being able to express yourself creatively within your own decision, to stand within that, to being emotionally stable, to not having a collection of backlogged thoughts that you suppress that will eventually outburst. Everything within us that we may be keeping secret that is actually very harmful in its nature, or things that we say or do, actions that we take that are very selfish and very self-serving and separating from those around us, or abusing our own bodies, and so separating ourselves from our body. So there's definitely hope, and the hope is the potential for individuals to come together within the same process of taking responsibility for themselves, changing themselves, and so creating a future for those to come, which would be the next generation. But that's going to be a long process. So, if you're willing to dedicate your life, no matter how many years you may have, you can already start right away. So you can look at Desteni, desteni.org, and see the process here that's involved, and it's all laid out for you. It's described within detail, and it's just common sense. It's things you already have observed and seen within yourself in some way or another. And so if you see the potential for you to change and become better, and that's something that you desperately want, then guess what? You're going to be able to do it as long as you stick to that point. So, it's all in your heads. Childcare is very important because who the human being is very important. It changes this reality. It affects others in ways that we may not really even fully be aware of, including myself. But the consequences of that can be seen everywhere. Okay. Thank you very much.